I turned 30 last month. For 10 years, I had poured everything into my father's construction company. Blood, sweat, and overtime hours building the family legacy from a small local outfit into a regional powerhouse. The company had been my future, my identity. Until yesterday, Dad called me into his office, put his hand on my shoulder, and said the words that shattered everything. "Son, I have decided to sell the business to Frank's group. You should start looking for other opportunities." Just like that, a decade of sacrifice gone. No inheritance, no future, no explanation. Before I continue this story, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and make sure to hit that subscribe button. You will not believe what happened after I walked out of that office, and how I turned this family betrayal into the biggest business lesson my father never expected to learn. Growing up in Portland, the Griffin Construction Company was more than just a business. It was our identity. My earliest memories involve riding in Dad's truck to job sites, the smell of sawdust and cement a comforting constant. My father, James Griffin, had built the company from scratch 25 years ago with nothing but a used pickup truck and determination. When other kids were playing video games, I was learning how to read blueprints. By 14, I was spending summers as a laborer, learning the business from the ground up. Dad always said, "Jack, this will all be yours someday. Every nail we hammer is building your future." School was never my strong suit, but construction made sense to me. After high school, while my friends went to college, I went straight to work for Dad full-time. "College is for people who need a job," he would say. "You already have one waiting for you right here." The first years were brutal. Dad showed no favoritism. I started as a laborer, working alongside guys who had been with the company for years. My hands bled, my back ached, but I never complained. I wanted to earn my place, not have it handed to me because I was the owner's son. By 23, I had worked up to foreman, managing crews and impressing even the most skeptical old-timers with my work ethic. Dad started bringing me to client meetings, teaching me the bidding process, showing me how to negotiate contracts. "You have a natural talent for this business," he told me after I landed our first government contract. "You understand people and you know construction. That combination is rare." For the next 7 years, I became his right hand. We expanded from residential to commercial projects. Our workforce grew from 15 to over 70 employees. I modernized our operations, implementing project management software that increased our efficiency by 30%. Revenue doubled, then tripled. Dad and I were a perfect team. He had the experience and connections. I had the energy and fresh ideas. We spoke the same language of blueprints and building codes. When we disagreed, we would hash it out over beers after work, usually finding a middle ground that worked better than either of our original ideas. Everyone in the industry knew I was being groomed to take over. Clients would joke about dealing with Griffin Jr. in the future. Suppliers started calling me first when they had special deals. Employees came to me with problems as often as they went to Dad. Last year, when Dad turned 60, he started talking about stepping back. "Getting too old for this," he would say, rubbing his knee that never healed right after a job site accident years ago. "Time for you to step up more." We discussed a 5-year transition plan with me, gradually taking control while he eased into semi-retirement. My wife Laura and I even put off having kids because we were so focused on the transition. "Just another year or two," I promised her. "Once I am settled as CEO, we will start our family." She understood the sacrifice because she saw how much the company meant to both of us. Then Frank Donovan entered the picture, a smooth-talking MBA who ran a venture capital group that had been buying up construction companies across the Northwest. He approached Dad 6 months ago about a potential strategic partnership. I hated him instantly. His pressed suits and manicured nails screamed outsider. He knew the industry terms but had clearly never swung a hammer in his life. When he talked about synergies and vertical integration, Dad seemed impressed. I just saw dollar signs in a shark's eyes. We should hear him out, Dad insisted after their first meeting. He has some interesting ideas about expansion. We do not need outside money, I argued. We are doing fine on our own. Better than fine. Jack, sometimes you need to think bigger. This could take Griffin construction to the next level. I reluctantly attended the follow-up meetings, watching with growing unease as Frank laid out his vision for the company. New markets, aggressive growth targets, corporate restructuring. Dad nodded along, asking questions that showed he was seriously considering the proposal. After each meeting, I would point out the holes in Frank's plans, the unrealistic projections, the risk to our company culture. Dad listened, agreed with some points, but kept inviting Frank back. Just exploring options, he assured me. Nothing wrong with hearing different perspectives. I never imagined those perspectives would end with me being pushed out of my own future. Yesterday started like any other Tuesday. I spent the morning at our biggest current project, a 4-story office building downtown. The concrete pour was scheduled, and I wanted to be there to make sure everything went smoothly. By mid-afternoon, I was back at headquarters, reviewing bids for upcoming work. Dad called me into his office around 4. I noticed Frank's fancy leather portfolio sitting on the desk, but thought nothing of it. Maybe we had finally convinced him our company was not for sale. "Close the door, son," Dad said, unusually formal. "We need to talk about the future." I sat down, expecting another strategy discussion. Maybe Dad was finally ready to set a retirement date, make our transition plan official. "I have been doing a lot of thinking," he began, not quite meeting my eyes, about what is best for the company long term. "Me too," I said, leaning forward eagerly. "I have some ideas for that downtown redevelopment project that could really position us for the municipal contracts next year." Dad held up his hand, stopping me. "Jack, I have made a decision." His voice was flat, businesslike. "I am selling controlling interest to Frank's investment group." The words did not register at first. Selling controlling interest? I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. "They are bringing in their own executive team, but they want to retain our key people, including you." He slid a document across the desk. "They are offering you a very generous 5-year contract as operations director. Same salary, better benefits." My mouth went dry. "Operations director, Dad, I am supposed to be CEO. We have been working toward that for years. My whole life has been about taking over this company. Plans change, son. This is a $30 million deal. That secures my retirement, your mother's future, a significant inheritance for you and your sister down the road. I do not want an inheritance later. I want what you promised me. The company. My legacy." My voice rose, hands gripping the armrests. Dad's expression hardened. "This is not up for debate. The letter of intent is already signed. The deal closes next month. Without even talking to me, I own 15% of this company, and I own 85%. This is my decision to make." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. 10 years of 60-hour weeks, of missed vacations, of putting the company ahead of everything, even starting my own family. All for nothing. Why was all I could manage to ask. Dad sighed, leaning back in the leather chair I had given him for his birthday 2 years ago. "Jack, you are a good builder, one of the best. But running a company at the level Frank wants to take us requires different skills. MBA-type skills. The kind you never got because you were too busy working." The irony was brutal. Too busy working for him to get the degree he was now saying I needed. "So that is it. You are handing my future over to some corporate vultures because I do not have the right letters after my name. I am securing all our futures," he corrected, "including yours, if you would stop being emotional and look at the contract they are offering." I stood up, unable to stay in that office another minute. "Keep your contract and your excuses." As I reached the door, he called after me. "Sleep on it, Jack. Do not make a rash decision you will regret." I turned back one last time. Funny. I was about to say the same thing to you. Then I walked out 10 years of loyalty and the only career I had ever known collapsing behind me. That night was the longest of my life. That secures my retirement, your mother's future, a significant inheritance for you and your sister down the road. I do not want an inheritance later. I want what you promised me. The company. My legacy. My voice rose, hands gripping the armrests. Dad's expression hardened. This is not up for debate. The letter of intent is already signed. The deal closes next month. Without even talking to me, I own 15% of this company, and I own 85%. Laura tried to comfort me, but what could she say? My father had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. He had not just taken away a job or a title, he had stolen my identity, my purpose. Maybe there is more to it than he is letting on, she suggested, as we sat on our back porch, the beer in my hand going warm and untouched. Your dad has always looked out for you. Not this time, I said, staring into the darkness. This time he looked out for himself. Sleep was impossible. He looked up unsurprised to see me. Morning, Jack. Coffee. I did not come for coffee, I said, remaining standing. I came for an honest explanation. Mom appeared in the doorway, concern etched on her face. Everything okay? Fine, Helen Dad said calmly. Jack and I just need to talk business. Why do not you go finish getting ready for your book club? She hesitated, looking between us, then nodded and disappeared upstairs. Dad gestured to the chair across from him. Sit down. Let us talk like adults. I remained standing. 10 years, Dad. 10 years I gave to your company. I doubled our revenue. I modernized our operations. I landed clients you said were impossible to get. And this is how you repay my loyalty. By selling out to some corporate sharks and telling me to be grateful for a consolation prize, he folded the newspaper carefully, taking his time. Are you finished? Not even close. Well, before you continue this tantrum, you might want to consider that every decision I have made has been with your best interests in mind. Even this one. How exactly does cutting me out of my inheritance benefit me? Dad sighed deeply. Jack, you are not ready to run Griffin Construction. Not at the level it needs to be run at. That is bull, and you know it. I have been running half the company for years, while you take longer and longer fishing trips. Running crews and projects, yes. But the strategic side, the financial planning, the corporate leadership, son, you have always resisted that part of the business. How many times did I suggest you take night classes in business administration? How many times did I invite you to the strategic planning sessions with our accountants and lawyers? Because I was too busy making sure the actual work got done. Someone had to be on the job sites while you were in those meetings. And that is exactly my point. He leaned forward, his voice lowering. You are a builder, Jack, a damn good one. But Griffin Construction has outgrown being run by builders alone. We need financial expertise, corporate connections, capital for expansion, things Frank's group brings to the table. So, bring them in as partners. Why sell controlling interest? Because they would not settle for less. And honestly, neither would I. His expression softened slightly. Jack, I am 60 years old. I have built this company from nothing. I want to enjoy the rewards, while I still cannot keep working until I drop dead on a job site. And what about what I want? What I have worked for? You will still have a place in the company. A good place with less pressure and more security than you would have as owner. I laughed bitterly. Less pressure. You mean less control, less opportunity, less of everything that matters. No son of mine should speak to me that way. His voice took on the edge I remembered from childhood scoldings. I have given you everything. A career most men would envy. Security. A future. And you act like I have robbed you. You have robbed me of my rightful place, of the future You promised me my whole life. Dad stood now, color rising in his face. I made no promises. I raised you to be part of this business, yes. But the business has evolved. The needs have changed. The only thing that changed is you getting greedy in your old age. The words came out before I could stop them. His palms slammed down on the table. That is enough. I have made my decision. The deal is happening. You can either accept the position they are offering or find another job. But this conversation is over. In that moment, something broke between us. Some fundamental trust, some core belief that family looked out for each other first. I saw my father not as the man who had taught me everything, but as someone who had used me to build value in a company he never truly intended to pass on. You are right about one thing, I said, my voice suddenly calm. This conversation is over. So is my time at Griffin Construction. I quit. Do not be dramatic, Jack. Where are you going to go? Construction is all you know. I know more than you think. I turned to leave, then paused. You taught me that at least. How to build something from nothing. I walked out of my childhood home feeling strange mixture of loss and liberation. The future I had counted on was gone. But for the first time in 10 years, my time was my own. My talents were my own. My potential belonged to no one but me. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. When you calm down, we can discuss your return. The door is open. I did not reply. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. I had never been one to sit around feeling sorry for myself, and betrayal turned out to be powerful fuel for action. The first thing I did was call Marcus Reeves, an old friend who had started his own small construction outfit focused on eco-friendly building. We had stayed in touch over the years occasionally, meeting for beers to commiserate over the challenges of the business. He had tried to recruit me several times, but I had always declined out of loyalty to Dad. I always knew you would call me someday, Marcus said, when I explained my situation. Your dad is an old-school builder, but the industry is changing. Green construction is the future, and you know it. We met that afternoon at his modest office, a converted shipping container at the edge of an industrial park. Unlike Dad's traditional oak and leather setup, Marcus's space was all reclaimed materials and natural light. I cannot match what you were making at Griffin, he admitted up front, but I can offer you partnership, 25% equity to start with option to increase based on performance. We are small now, but growing fast. I liked Marcus's straightforward approach, but I was not ready to jump into another situation where someone else controlled my destiny. I appreciate the offer, I told him, but I need to figure out my own path right now. Marcus nodded understanding. The offer stands. In the meantime, how about project contract work? I have more jobs than supervisors right now. That arrangement worked perfectly. I could earn income while keeping my options open. By the end of the week, I was overseeing a sustainable apartment complex renovation, applying my skills in a new context. Laura supported me completely. Maybe this is the push you needed, she said one night, as we revised our budget to account for my reduced income. You have always had ideas about better ways to build. Now you can pursue them without your dad shooting them down. She was right. For years, I had been interested in sustainable construction techniques, but Dad had been resistant. Fancy environmental stuff cuts into margins, he would say, dismissing my suggestions for more energy-efficient designs or renewable materials. 2 weeks after quitting Griffin Construction, I registered Griffin Green Builders, LLC. The name was deliberate. I had earned the right to the Griffin name through a decade of sweat equity. News travels fast in the construction community. Within days of filing the paperwork, I received a call from my father, Green Builders. He said, not bothering with a greeting. Really, Jack, you are going to compete against your own family with some tree-hugger company, not competing, Dad. Just finding my own way, since you made it clear there is no place for me in your plans. There was a place for you, A good position with security and benefits as an employee, not as family, not as your son and successor. This is how you repay everything I have taught you. By taking our name and using it against me, I am a Griffin too. And everything I know I earned through work. On your job sites, building your company. Or have you conveniently forgotten that part? The conversation deteriorated from there. By the end, Dad was threatening legal action over the name, and I was suggesting he focus on his precious deal with Frank instead of worrying about my small startup. We did not speak again for nearly a month. I threw myself into building my new business. Marcus sent subcontracting work my way. Two of Griffin Construction's best project managers, unhappy about the impending corporate takeover, jumped ship to join me. A supplier who had always appreciated my straightforward approach offered favorable credit terms. Small jobs led to larger ones. Our focus on sustainable building practices opened doors with clients concerned about environmental impact. We were small but growing, operating out of a rented warehouse space that doubled as an office. Laura had taken over the administrative side of the business, applying skills from her previous career in office management. We should bid on the Westview project, she suggested one evening as we reviewed potential jobs. I know it is bigger than anything we have done so far, but your reputation would give us a real shot. The Westview project was a large-scale community development with an eco-friendly focus, exactly the kind of high-profile job that could put Griffin Green Builders on the map. It was also exactly the kind of project my father's company would typically bid on. That would put us in direct competition with Griffin Construction, I pointed out. Laura raised an eyebrow. And nothing, I said, after a moment's consideration. You are right. Let us go for it. Preparing the bid consumed us for 2 weeks. I knew we would be competing against larger, more established companies, including my father's. Our advantage was specialization and personal attention. I included innovative approaches to energy efficiency and sustainable materials that would reduce long-term operating costs, even if they increased the initial budget somewhat. The day before the bids were due, I received an unexpected visitor at our warehouse. Frank Donovan, immaculate in his tailored suit, looking oddly out of place among our building materials and tools. "Impressive operation you have started here," he said, glancing around with what seemed like genuine interest. "Your father mentioned you had gone out on your own." "I doubt those were his exact words," I replied, not bothering to hide my suspicion. "What do you want, Frank, direct?" "I appreciate that." He smiled smoothly. "I will be equally direct. We know you are bidding on Westview. So Griffin Construction is also bidding. Your father's company, which will soon be our company." He straightened his already perfect tie. "It creates an awkward situation. Only for you, actually for all of us, including you." Frank leaned against a workbench, careful not to get dust on his suit. "Jack, I will be blunt. Your startup is impressive, but you are overreaching with Westview. It is too big for your operation right now." "That is for the client to decide." "Indeed it is. But consider this, if you withdraw your bid, I am prepared to subcontract 20% of our work to Griffin Green Builders when we win. Guaranteed revenue, no risk to you." The offer was tempting on its face. Guaranteed work would stabilize our fledgling company. But I understood what he was really doing, trying to remove competition while keeping me under their thumb. "And if I refuse," Frank shrugged, "then we compete fairly. But understand that we have resources you do not. Relationships with suppliers, bonding capacity, equipment. The practical advantages are all on our side, except one I countered. I actually care about building something that lasts, something sustainable, not just extracting maximum profit." Noble sentiment. His condescending tone made my teeth clench. "I will need your answer by tomorrow morning." After he left, I called an emergency meeting with my small team. I laid out Frank's offer and the reality of our situation. "We are the underdogs here," I admitted. No question. Taking the subcontract would be the safe play. Marcus, who had become my informal advisor, shook his head. Safe does not build a reputation or a legacy, but failure could sink us before we really get started. Laura pointed out, ever practical. I looked around at the team we had assembled. Talented, dedicated people who had taken a chance on Griffin Green Builders. On me. If we back down now, we will always be living in their shadow, I said finally. I say, we submit our bid, our best work. Let the client decide. The vote was unanimous. We would compete head-on against Griffin Construction. The Westview Selection Committee took 2 weeks to review all submissions. 2 agonizing weeks of second-guessing and stress dreams. Laura and I barely talked about anything else. Then the call came. We had made the final round along with Griffin Construction and 1 other company. The committee wanted in-person presentations from each finalist. Dad would certainly be leading the Griffin presentation. It would be the first time we had been in the same room since our falling out. The thought made my stomach churn but also strengthened my resolve. We prepared meticulously. Every detail of our presentation was scrutinized, refined, perfected. I practiced until I could deliver our vision with absolute conviction. The day of presentations arrived. We were scheduled second with Griffin Construction going last. As we set up our materials in the waiting area, I saw my father and Frank arrive with their team. Dad noticed me immediately, his expression unreadable. Frank nodded professionally, as though our previous conversation had never happened. That is for the client to decide. Indeed it is. But consider this, if you withdraw your bid, I am prepared to subcontract 20% of our work to Griffin Green Builders when we win. Guaranteed revenue, no risk to you. The offer was tempting on its face. Guaranteed work would stabilize our fledgling company. But I understood what he was really doing, trying to remove competition while keeping me under their thumb. And if I refuse, Frank shrugged, then we compete fairly. I answered honestly, acknowledging our company's youth, but highlighting our specialized expertise. When it was over, I felt we had made the strongest case possible. Protocol required all finalists to remain until all presentations were complete. That meant sitting through Griffin Construction's pitch. Dad was masterful as always. Confident, experienced, reassuring. Frank provided slick financial projections and impressive corporate credentials. Together, they presented a formidable case. Afterward, in the hallway, Dad approached me while Frank was distracted by a committee member. "Good presentation in there," he said, surprising me. "You always did have a way with clients." "Thanks," I replied cautiously. "Yours too." An awkward silence stretched between us. Finally, Dad spoke again, his voice lower. "Your mother misses you. Sunday dinners are not the same." The simple statement hit me harder than I expected. I missed those dinners too. The easy conversation, Mom's cooking, the sense of belonging. But that was before. "Tell her I miss her too," I said. "But some things cannot go back to how they were." Dad nodded, a flicker of what might have been regret crossing his face. Then Frank appeared at his elbow, and the moment passed. "May the best company win," Frank said with that practiced smile. "They will," I responded, meeting his gaze directly. The committee's decision came 3 days later. Griffin Green Builders had won the Westview contract. The official statement cited our innovative approach to sustainability and energy efficiency as the deciding factors. My phone rang within minutes of the announcement. It was Dad. "Congratulations," he said, his tone difficult to read. "The better proposal won." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely surprised by the graciousness. Frank is livid. He continued, a hint of satisfaction creeping into his voice. Says, "I should never have taught you so well. I did not know how to respond to that." Was it a compliment? An admission? That contract is a big responsibility. Dad continued after a moment. "Bigger than anything you have handled before." "I know. We are ready for it." Another pause. "Then If you need any advice, you know where to find me. It was the closest thing to an olive branch I could have expected. Not an apology, not a reversal of his decision to sell the company, but an acknowledgement of my capability, of our connection despite everything. I appreciate that, I said carefully. We talked a few minutes more awkwardly, navigating this new territory between estrangement and reconciliation. When we hung up, I sat in my office for a long time processing the conversation and the win. Laura found me there, a bottle of champagne in hand. "Time to celebrate," she announced. "We just landed the biggest eco-development in the city." The team gathered around as we popped the cork. Amid the celebration, I found myself reflecting on the strange path that had led here. 6 months ago, I had been the heir apparent to Griffin Construction. Now I was the founder of a competing company that had just beat them on a major contract. Life takes unexpected turns. The betrayal that had seemed like an ending had become a beginning. I had lost an inheritance, but found something more valuable. Independence, purpose, a chance to build something that truly reflected my values. The deal to sell Griffin Construction to Frank's group fell apart a month later. Dad never shared the details, but industry gossip suggested Frank had gotten cold feet after losing the Westview project. Or perhaps Dad had reconsidered after seeing what his son could accomplish independently. Our relationship remained complicated. Too much had been said, too many expectations shattered to simply return to normal. But we were talking again, occasionally consulting each other on industry matters. Showing up at the same family events without tension filling the room, Griffin Green Builders flourished. The Westview project put us on the map, attracting clients who shared our vision for responsible development. We grew deliberately, maintaining our values as we expanded. A year after that fateful day in Dad's office, he invited me to lunch, just the two of us at the diner, where he used to take me after visiting job sites when I was a kid. "I was wrong," he said, without preamble, after we had ordered. Words I had rarely heard from him in 31 years. I waited, letting him continue at his own pace. "Not about selling the company," he clarified. "That was the right business decision at the time. But I was wrong about you. About what you were capable of building on your own. It took losing everything to figure that out." I said, not bitterly, just stating a fact. Dad nodded slowly. "Sometimes we hold on too tight to the things we care about. I wanted to secure your future. Instead, I almost prevented it. My future was never yours to secure. I realized as I said it, just like the company was yours to sell. We each have to make our own way." Wise words. He smiled slightly. A year after that fateful day in Dad's office, he invited me to lunch, just the two of us at the diner, where he used to take me after visiting job sites when I was a kid. "I was wrong," he said, without preamble, after we had ordered. Words I had rarely heard from him in 31 years. I waited, letting him continue at his own pace. "Not about selling the company," he clarified. "That was the right business decision at the time. But I was wrong about you. At current market value, which is substantially higher than when you left." I looked at the envelope, but did not touch it. "Why?" "Because you have built something of your own now, something impressive, something true to who you are." His eyes met mine, more open than I had seen them in years. And because holding on to pieces of the past sometimes prevents us from fully embracing the future, he was right. As long as I held that minority stake in Griffin Construction, part of me would always be looking backward, wondering what might have been. It was time to fully commit to the path I had chosen. I opened the envelope. The offer was more than fair. Enough to secure Griffin Green Builders' future, expand our operations, maybe even buy the warehouse we had been renting. "I accept," I said, extending my hand. As we shook hands, I felt something shift between us. Not a return to what was before, but the beginning of something new. A relationship between equals, between two builders who had taken different paths but could respect each other's journeys. Sometimes, betrayal becomes the foundation for something better than what was lost. Sometimes being denied your expected inheritance forces you to create something truly your own. And sometimes the hardest lessons lead to the most important growth. What happened with your family that changed everything? Have you ever had to start over when a plan fell apart? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming life's unexpected challenges. Share this video with someone who might need encouragement to forge their own path. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the best legacy is the one you build yourself.